January 29th, 2021 started out just like any other day. But then you get a phone call in the middle of the day that turned that seemingly ordinary day into anything but. You get a phone call that flips your world on its head in a matter of an instant. It goes from being a regular Friday to being a day that will change your life in an instant. That phone call was my dad telling me that my sister Brittney had died unexpectedly. There are some things about that day that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. This is the reality of loss and what grief really looks like. My sister was 30 years old when she died unexpectedly on January 29th, 2021. She was the salt of the earth, one of the best people that I knew. Her heart was so big for other people, and she put it out there. She wore it on her sleeve. And just the amount of people that she impacted throughout her short time on Earth was astounding. It really was. And that's what I always miss about her, is the impact she could have continued to have. She was a second grade teacher, and just the impact that she had on those kids who literally had nothing but her to look forward to on a daily basis. She took that very seriously. And I think that there was a loss, in those kids' lives because of her not being there. Because she did take an interest in them. She took an interest in their lives. For some, like I said, that was all that they had to look forward to on a regular basis. And her loss stings still to this day. And I'd like to talk about how I've taken that experience and the grief and the loss that I've experienced in the past 2 years and try to do something good by sharing her story, sharing my grief story, to hopefully help those that may be struggling with loss, that may be going through a tough time with a family member, either have an illness or you've recently lost them. And I hope that this helps in some form or fashion. Hard to believe that it's been 2 years since Brittney passed away unexpectedly. What seemed like a normal day, or what started out as a normal day, turned into one that is you hope that no one ever has to go through or experience. Like, how do you fathom that a person is alive and well at breakfast and the same day after lunch, they're dead. It's a lot to fathom. It's a lot to take in, obviously. Earlier that day, I actually got a text from her saying that she had just sent my then 2-year-old, who she absolutely adored, that she had sent her a package of water beads and a new book. And if you have kids, you may have heard of water beads. They are the most brutal toy of all time, messy, impossible to clean up. So she sent me that text sort of as a joke saying, get ready for a lot of cleanup. So I sent her a joking text back saying, I appreciate it, kind of sarcastically, but sort of truthfully. And little did I know that that was the last time that I would ever interact with my sister. Because 2 hours later, I would get a call that changed my life forever. And it was simply 2 words. She died. My wife actually took the call because we had gotten a brief phone call 15 minutes prior saying that her heart had stopped. So I was busy getting clothes together, packing, trying to get to home as quickly as I could. And I just remember feeling, after I heard those words, just a feeling unlike any other. It was, the breath had just been sucked right out of you. And you almost felt just unable to stand, unable to support your own weight. It was almost like, you just dropped to your knees, and it's a feeling you'll never forget. You hope you never have to experience again, but it's one that's, kind of burned into your brain. And I just remember the gamut of emotions, kind of replaying the past 30 years in your head, replaying all the memories and all the great times that you've had together, both individually with each other and as a family. And you think about all the times that you were supposed to have, the times and the memories that you were supposed to make are now vanished, and you kind of feel robbed, you kind of feel cheated out of those times. And I think that's what's the most difficult about it. I remember the day after she died, sitting in a funeral home less than 24 hours after this had happened, and thinking, how in the world did we get here? How in the world did this happen? Why did this happen? Just so many questions, without any answers. I think the toughest part about the immediate, I would say, week after Brittney died was the day after her celebration of life and her funeral. Because from the day that she passed until the funeral was about 5 days. And you had people coming over to the house, you had things that distracted you, friends coming over and talking about old memories, that put a smile on your face, people bringing over food, family coming over and comforting. There was always some sort of distraction. The celebration of life was done by two of our best family friends, and just the words that they uttered about my sister on behalf of my sister were phenomenal, and it made you feel like you couldn't have said anything better yourself. Like, I remember speaking at Brittney's celebration of life thinking, I don't know how I'm going to say anything better than what these two guys have just said, which was fantastic. What a cool tribute, what a cool feeling. I just remember being at this celebration of life and just so mentally and physically exhausted. It was almost like, I don't know if anybody's experienced this, but you are just so mentally worn out and exhausted. Like, it's almost like I didn't have any tears left to cry. It was, I don't know if that's physically possible for your body to run out of tears, but during that time, it was almost like I tried to cry when there were times where it invoked that in me. I remember thinking, like, I just don't have the ability to do it. I don't know, it was just a weird feeling. But the morning after the funeral, I just remember it being the loneliest I had ever been in my entire life. And it was kind of after all the dust had settled, all the pomp and circumstance had subsided. Everyone had gone back to their lives, as everyone, does, as you move forward. And my dad and I drove her car to be taken into the dealership to be sold. And I remember thinking, like, this is just the loneliest feeling I've ever felt in my life. It's almost like there was no one on the road, just me and my dad. I don't even think we said a word to each other, just because because of just how much pain there still was, and then the harsh realization that everyone had gone on with their lives, but our family was still hurting, and hurting bad. It was just a tough, harsh realization that no matter what happens to you, the sun's going to keep coming out, and the world and the people will continue to move forward, which is a difficult reality to face. No matter what anyone says, the reality of loss it sucks. I mean, it is absolutely brutal. And there is nothing that anyone can say or do really to make the pain go away. And as well-meaning as people are, and as well-intentioned as they are, there's really nothing they can do. And I think people have asked me throughout the last couple of years, it's just like, what's the best way to support you? What's the best way to help? Because they don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. Like, people are afraid to say the wrong thing, which can then turn into saying something that they think is well-meaning, but in turn is really insensitive, if you will. For example, people have asked me throughout the past couple of years, what's the best thing to do, or what's the best thing to say for someone going through a tough time when they're dealing with the loss of a family member. And I would say this, very simply, the only thing that you can say is, I'm sorry, I hate that this happened to you, please let me know if there's anything I can do. Because anything outside of that would seem, to me, very, very insensitive, or like you don't understand what just happened. The platitudes and the cheerleading doesn't help. In the moment, keep in mind, in the moment, saying things like, oh, everything happens for a reason, or that was just in the plan, or keep the faith, or be strong. Another one that people tended to say was, I can't even imagine what you're going through right now. And I think the scary thing about that for people is they actually are imagining what we're going through right now. That's the scary part, is as soon as that bad thing happened, as soon as you heard the news of my sister dying, the immediate thought was, wow, that could happen to me. Because I was the person that was like that. I was the person that said, or when they heard of bad news, or they heard of someone dying unexpectedly, or something that hit really close to home, is your thought immediately goes to the worst case scenario. Your thought immediately goes to, I can imagine that happening to me, and that would be devastating if it did. And then all of a sudden, on a normal Friday afternoon, the worst case scenario and the worst possible scenario does happen. And so I think people, they need to be careful when talking about, well, I can't imagine, is because you have imagined it and it's as terrible as you think it is. Trust me. Another thing that people deal with are the physical changes to your body, as far as obviously I already had anxiety, but you tack on like depression on top of that with a traumatic event, and what that does to your body. It almost felt like on a regular basis, it was almost in a brain fog. It was almost like you couldn't think. It was hard to get out like complete thoughts. It was hard to focus. It was hard to keep attention, those sorts of things. It was almost like, again, like I said, like a cloudy, hazy fog. And that carried on for quite some time, which was really difficult. It only made it like difficult to function in just daily life. I remember being super tired, almost like exhausted. I didn't even do anything, almost being exhausted at the end of the day, and then just physically having to drag myself out of bed in the morning, which is something that I usually am, quick to sleep. Have 2 kids now, and I'm up at between 6 and 7 every day. And I just remember just being so tired and so drained mentally and physically that that took a real toll on me from a physical standpoint. And I know a lot of folks have talked about different weight changes and over or under eating, just crippling anxiety and depression. And I think the scary thing for people, as I mentioned, is just how anxiety drives through the roof, because your worst case scenario has become your real life scenario, which is really tough to go through. So to wrap this up, if you stayed with me this long, thank you for listening. Thank you for hearing my journey through this very difficult time, my family's journey through this difficult time. I hope that you never have to experience this yourself. But what it has done for me is it has helped my perspective. I feel like I'm more present. I feel like the time that I have with my family, and specifically my children, I'm more locked in with them and not taking for granted the time that I spend with them, because they are growing up and I don't want to miss anything. How important my family is, how important my time with my wife is, how important my parents are, because their experience with this grief is completely different than mine. I can't imagine losing one of my children and how difficult that would be. And that's something that they're having to live with on a daily basis. And so, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time on Thoughts in the Car.